My name is Paula Harris. I'm a principal and senior vice president and second generation family member at Golub & Company. We're a 58-year-old, 3 generations strong real estate investment and development company. So I'm going to pass the mic for a minute.
Thank you so much for being here tonight. We're very excited. My name is Mirela Gabrowska. I'm principal and first-generation family owner of MBG Consulting. We do commercial occupier, lease administration, lease audits. And I have been a crew member for the entire duration of the life of my company, which is 16 years. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Erica Marshall. I work at Zeller Realty Group. I'm the leasing director over there. I lease the Wrigley Building in 401 North Michigan and Old Orchard Towers out in Skokie, Illinois. So welcome to our event.
And I'm Carrie O'Hare. I work at Oxford Capital Group. I've been at Oxford for about 20 years as senior vice president and controller. We are a private equity firm and invest primarily in real estate focused on hospitality.
Okay, thanks everybody. So I'm really excited for our program tonight because in my company, I've taken on the role of like the champion of our company culture. So I get to speak from a little experience. I love our culture. I think it's extremely engaging, and I'm really committed to keeping it healthy. So we've asked everybody to come here tonight with what works for you at your companies. How do you feel engaged? What's working? And bring us some things where you're challenged. So we've asked you to do that. So we're going to have some really great collaboration and conversation. And by the end of the night, I think we will have this robust collection of really good ideas that you can take back with you. I just want to tell you that no matter if you're a principal of your company or if you're a team leader, small team, large team, or a participant on a team, which for sure we all are, I hope that when you leave here tonight that you will be eager to infuse more engagement in your workplace. So I'm going to hand it over to Mirela, and she's going to talk about the intentions and the agenda for us today.
So I thought that I'd like to start with just a few sentences related to culture in general, and then make it relevant to the culture of engagement so we can set the tone, and then I can take you through what we are trying to achieve with this particular program. So what is a culture? So culture is the social order of an organization. So everything that is accepted, not accepted, everything that's engaging, not engaging, comes from this culture. And it's really important to know that if the culture is set by, if the strategy of an organization is set up by the CEO or the C-level people, the culture is actually set up by all of us, from top to bottom and from bottom to top. And one of the elements of our program tonight is to talk about not only how you as a leader or as a business owner can make that cultural change to lead to culture of engagement, but also how can we all entice our employees to be that agent that can transform this culture. There is a saying that says that culture can eat strategy in a breakfast. And that's really powerful because when you think about it, it's one thing to have strategy, but it's a very different thing how the culture is going to make that strategy happen. So I'd like to briefly talk about what does it look like to work for a company that you go to work and everyone smiles and everyone goes to the extra mile to do the extra work. And people are happy and really encouraging each other. And then you work for a company that you have 1/3 of your employees not showing up at work. You have people that do not go to the extra mile to do any of the extra work. There is so big gap between working for a company that gives you an incentive to be happy and to be engaged versus a company that's really difficult to accomplish this. There is a Gallup study that says that 33% of the American workforce is disengaged at work. So at an average company, you have 1/3 of your employees or your peers that are not going to be engaged. And we know very well that the culture of engagement really affects the business, whether you run the business or whether you are working with a number of people and you are depending on their work as well. And so 52% appear to be actively disengaged, according to the Gallup study. And when you put all of these numbers together, at the end of the day, you realize that if you have an engaged workforce versus disengaged workforce, can make such a huge difference in everyday's work and on everything that we're trying to accomplish as leaders. So the purpose of this program is to talk a little bit about how can you create a culture of engagement? This is not just a word that you put it in your employee's mailbox and say, I want you to be engaged. That is not something that you can buy right away. It's something that requires a lot of planning, a lot of work, a lot of understanding where the disengagement might be coming from. And so the intent of this program tonight is to really talk about what is really the culture of engagement. What does that mean? It also, we are aiming to understand what really requires of us and for all of the people that we can influence, that they can contribute to this culture of engagement. We would like to make sure that with our 2 interactive sessions that every one of you is going to be paired at the table that you're sitting, that we're actually sharing very specific real-life experiences as to how we can have accomplished this for our organizations and hopefully inspire you to take a positive action when you get back to work and do something and implement some of the ideas that we're talking about. And so agenda for tonight's program, very specific, is Paul is going to take us through what really is the culture of engagement. She will also outline all of the elements that we thought are the most important for thinking through what brings the culture of engagement in our organizations. That doesn't mean that we're going to give you a comprehensive list, and it doesn't mean that that list, if you implement it tomorrow, will bring you the culture of engagement. But you have to start somewhere. And so we'll talk about, at the end of the day, how do you strengthen the engagement within your organization, and what can we all do differently? Paula?
Okay, so if you watched the Simon Sinek TED Talk before you came here tonight, he talked a lot about how people who are trusted in their companies do remarkable things. We're going to watch a quick video right now, and this is from the perspective of captain of a submarine. And his message is how to empower others to think, engage, and be great. So let's take a look at this. So, what struck you from that video? Anybody? Anybody at all? Well, go forth and be, oh, yes.
It reminds me of the concept of project management, agile, and so.
Okay. Well, some of the things that came up in my mind were, it's like giving people intent instead of instruction is another way of trusting your people, right? And giving them autonomy and really giving them what they need to do to grow in their positions. I mean, it's a simple message. Everything we're going to talk about today is kind of simple, but yet it's not. It's hard to do, as they said. It's very simple, but it's hard to do. It just takes a different mindset. Okay, so let's move on. So what do we mean by engagement? There's a lot of definitions out there. It's a really pretty hot topic. And before we engage you further, let's just start with one we got from the Barrett Value Center. It's going to help us focus on our conversation. Employee engagement is a measure of the degree of emotional and intellectual involvement that employees have with an organization. It has a direct impact on the amount of enthusiasm and commitment they bring to their work, as Marilla was saying. This is we're using this as our guide. So I'm going to turn it over to Erica and Carrie, and we're going to now start to share amongst ourselves.
So we're going to do a group exercise amongst each of our tables. We're going to look at how does your organization strengthen engagement. As pre-work, we asked each of you to think of a norm or practice at your company that strengthens engagement. At your tables, we'd like each person to share their example for the group to learn. We're going to take about 15-20 minutes for this activity. Each person will have about 3 minutes to share. And then at each table, you all have your computers.
Appoint a scribe and a spokesperson to share the highlights from your conversation. One person at your table will record your ideas on Google Docs so that we can share all the ideas with you after the session. All right, begin.
All right, ladies, we'll wrap it up, and Paul's going to take us to the next part of the conversation.
Okay, I know you guys don't really want to stop talking, but we gotta keep this rolling. Okay, you all know that you're going to get this great list of things that you've all been talking about, so it's really cool. Okay, so real quickly, there are 6 areas that we've asserted are core to this discussion, and I'm going to quickly read them. Alignment with purpose and values, sense of trust, safety, and collaboration, open and transparent communication, ability to do your work, commitment to growth and development, and integrity in hiring, recognition, and rewards. All right, I'm going to talk a bit about clearly articulated organizational purpose and values.
Paula,
Yes.
describe what we're going to do with the spreadsheets that everyone has been working on.
What we just did, we're going to come back to them after we talk a little bit about these things I just had mentioned to you. And then we're going to talk about the challenges that we all are bringing or have at our companies and some ideas around that at the tables again. Thank you. Okay, so clearly articulated organizational purpose and values. So obviously, first step is to define purpose and values and really write them down. When my father started our company many years ago, 58 years ago now, our values were really a reflection of his own personal values, but they weren't really formally articulated in any way. So about 10 years ago, I decided, we really got to get this down on paper. We got to get it right. So we involved our whole executive team and ownership, and we sat down and we said, okay, let's decide what are we going to say so that people can really be clear. So we did that. And to give you some perspective, I'll give you the Reader's Digest version of what our values are, because I'm going to talk about them a lot. We're respectful to each other. We stay flexible, creative, innovative. We display integrity. We build relationships and create value for our company, employees, partners, and clients. So that's what we do, and that's how we live. We believe that our values are really a roadmap for behavior, okay? How we work together, both internally and with people outside of our company. It's how we're behaving. It's not just what we're doing at work, it's how do we do it? How do we do it? It's so important. If they're not clear, they just won't be a guiding force. So that's number one. Then we got leadership that walks the talk. I mean, leaders need to lead by example. We all know that. It sends a much more powerful message than just talking about something. Do as I say, not as I do, simply doesn't work. Anyone who's a parent knows that. They know it firsthand. When we make decisions and take actions based on purpose and values, we create clarity and consistency for our people. And then organizational norms, practices, and systems that reinforce the values. Our purpose and values can't just live as posters in a boardroom, and they can't just be lip service. The more the environments really reflect them, the more people will connect to them. I'll tell you a little bit about how we did this at our company. Once we articulated our values, we decided, okay, well, now we got to get them through the whole company. You know, we have one small group who's talked about them, and how are we going to get the rest, everybody else on board? So we created a team of people. Like, okay, let's sit down and design a way to get the communication out to everyone. And we came up with a shared values workshop, a day-long workshop. And we put on this workshop. Our first one, we decided, okay, we're only going to have a small group of people in this. We don't want to invite the whole company. We want to have conversation just like we're having here today. We want to do it like that. So we had our first workshop. It was great. And then we said, okay, is there anyone here who wants to work on the next one? So we had a few people, and we said, all right, come on, let's redesign it. Let's even make it better. So we did that, and we redesigned it for the next 20 people. And we did that like 3 or 4 times before we kind of got it down to the point where it really made sense. Now, I've just engaged a lot of people to do one thing, and that was to get in line with our values. So we went through the whole company, and then now what we do is we have a workshop every year for all our new employees. So again, from my experience, when people are working from the same set of behaviors that are aligned with a company's values, then that's how you create a really, truly enjoyable work environment where people can do their best work. And then we make it a fun day as well. This workshop, it's kind of amazing what you can learn when one of the first things you ask a new employee is what cartoon character actually is a reflection of your own personal values. You know, it starts really interesting conversation. I always say I like to emulate Winnie the Pooh because he's, you know, gentle, and he really gets people to work together, and he's very patient. So it's a fun thing. So at the end, towards the end of our shared values, we ask people to give us a visual expression of the day and how they see our values. So everybody gets like 15 minutes, and we get these little mini canvases and get some pens out, and people draw, and they say, okay, here's how it feels today. And we put them up on this big board, and kind of like a mosaic. They got Velcro on it, and that's what this is a picture of, and it works really well. As it turns out, we put this board in one of our conference rooms because it's so big we didn't even know what to do with it. And that room happens to be one of the places that we do a lot of our interviewing. And so we've got people in there, and they go like, "What's that?" And we go, "Well, this is what our values look like." And it's really great because they get a glimpse into what we're all about. Okay, now we're going to go to what's next. Morella, I think you're next.
So when cultural values get aligned with personal values, you really bring the best out of everybody. And so what Paula talked about is values within the organization and how you really talk about this to engage people and make the values their values. Can you guys share any experiences that you can talk about in terms of values and how the corporate values have become yours and vice versa? Have you seen a big difference when this is done right or not done right? Please.
I was going to say is that I think when the values are delivered top down, I think it's much more difficult to tell employees that these are their values. If you have the ability to engage a wider group of employees and what their values are and how maybe those can be interpreted into this how they're connected to corporate values, you can create more emotional engagement and personal passion around it. But sometimes the corporate values can be a little corporate. And they may not meet my values, or I may not get how they are. So companies who understand how to engage from below and bring that up to a group understanding versus dictating down.
I might add to that. My experience has a lot to do with people. You know, I don't think that they really want to be two different people. They want to feel the same as they do at work as they do in their personal lives. And I find that people take our values and they go, yeah, well, I do connect to them, and that's how I am at home, and that's how I am with my kids, and that's how I am at work. And in the best of cultures, I think that's what you go for. It's awesome.
Yes, please. At JLL, we have teamwork, ethics, and excellence. And that is garnered in every single opportunity we have to serve either customers, clients, and everyone. And everything that's being pushed to us from our CEO, it embodies it. And everything coming from below, it embodies it. When you are starting off at the company and you have a great idea, people are willing to listen. As long as you deliver it with excellence, they're willing to take it on. And so it works both ways. And then engaging teams to all work together. So, I mean, 3 very statements that I think we could all embody in our personal lives as well as in a corporate level. Okay. Yes, please.
So I was gonna say, I work at a small company, and I think our CEO embodies his values. He hasn't suggested what they are, but I think in general we all kind of have a very similar outlook. And so I actually went through an exercise with him probably about 6 or 8 weeks ago and said, look, you want all of us to follow what you do and how you present yourself to everybody, but not everybody here shares that same concept. And we're seeing it in a little bit of conflicts that were happening in the office, just by way of too much work or people being overworked or not enough work, and seeing, just those little small conflicts that happen. And so I said, look, we should go through and have like a culture engagement session. And he was like, well, what do you mean by that? And I said, well, you just have to express what you think the culture in our office is, or express what you want it to be. And then I think we sat at lunch and everybody was sitting there while he, kind of gave a little bit of a background and said, I think all of us have this in us. We just have to remember to engage and express those, respect, high intensity working, and, all of those things that he kind of just has in general, and everybody in our office has, but there's times when you kind of just don't express those things. So I think it helped, and it actually changed the culture for a while in the office. People started being more respectful because they were like, oh yeah, I guess I should, or I wasn't as respectful as I should have been, thanks for kind of reminding me. So I think it's important to have it kind of visual, and that board seems pretty engaging for everybody that walks by it and says, oh yeah, I gotta remember that I need to be nice to somebody today.
Well, you're going to get a lot of good ideas from today already.
You also actually were able to express this. A lot of people might have felt there was some risk in doing that.
Oh,
right?
sure.
Yeah.
And so you must have felt comfortable that the CEO would say, okay, I'm open to this.
Yeah.
And that's a very
And this is a
good
great observation, and we'll talk about this, because in order for this dialogue to take place, you have to know that your opinion is valued, and you have to have a culture where you are listened to. And we'll talk about this, but thank you for the feedback. Yes, please.
So I'm going to give the counterexample. I was at JLL very early in my career, and the emphasis there was all about, or at least what I took away, was excellent client service. And you always put the needs of the client before your own and before your fellow employees, and that's really what you're there for. And it was a very ethical culture. I went to a company where the tone from, and I never believed that a whole company culture could be set from the tone from the top. I thought that was ridiculous. There's only one person and there's 5,000 other people. But I went to a culture where the CEO was really a pretty poisonous person.
In a bad way?
What?
In a bad way?
Yeah, poisonous.
Poisonous. I don't think you can be a good poison. He was a guy that was in it for himself. Always thought he was the smartest person in the room. And he was interested in following the letter of the law, but never the spirit. So he was always, getting really close to the edge. And he fostered in his executive team a sense of everybody was never wanted to be the person who was gonna get blamed for something, so they were always looking, nobody would ever share bad news, everybody would try and blame somebody else whenever bad news came out. And it was just, and it filtered down because those incredibly stressed out executives then worked with teams, and if, God forbid, anybody on their team made a mistake, I mean, it was horrible.
So thank you for talking about this, because that's the other side of culture of engagement. When it doesn't exist, it's really not good, and the poisonous environment can really derail the business as well. So to build on what Paula had said, we kind of want to talk a little bit about the other elements that really are a big part of creating the culture of engagement. So she talked about values. In addition to the values, we really thought that an important piece of this puzzle is constant effort to create the sense of trust, collaboration, and safety within the office, that team environment. And if I may, I'll just share a personal story. So my firm has about 20-something people, and I have been running the business for 16 years. We have never lost a client for this 16 years. Last year, and it all has been, how can we deliver 100% excellence, to your point, of our clients? Last year, I had 10 people leaving the company for various reasons, different time. We lost 3 people to California. We lost 2 people because they were attorneys and they decided to go back and study law. We lost 2 people for finding a new job. We lost few people for non-performance. I thought my world has crashed. The reason I'm bringing this up is because what happened changed the dynamic, and I want to use it as an opportunity to share this with you, because things, when they're good, we rarely take a step back and say we're lucky, we really have it. However, when things are bad, they really wake you up, and you really have to make a change. So what I did is I reached out to Sharon, and I said, Sharon, I need help. I need professional help. And what really the help was about is how do you actually permit everything that I believe in, which is hard work, ethics, working hard, working late. How do you bring all of these values from top up all the way so the entire company believes in you? And so obviously we have a fantastic group of people, but it's a very difficult market right now. Employees are ready to leave you like that simply because they can make an extra buck elsewhere. It's a very employee-driven market. So, and I said to Sharon, how do I do this culture of engagement? And she said, Mirella, this is not something that you just do. You have to keep working on it. And really the moral of the story, and the reason I'm sharing this with you, and as you can see, I'm exposing myself to share with you, my friends, one of the most difficult times of my life. I thought I'm losing my company, I will lose my clients. And we have grown to be 50 clients, and we work with Boeing and Texas Instruments and Intel. We have grown over the years tremendously. The question is, how do you sustain this? And one of the things that really we have learned, and I really honestly share with you, is that permission to be vulnerable, to say and be open about what you have felt in doing. So as a result of our sessions, and this is kind of a pictures of what Sharon has done for my company. So we had several strategy sessions, and we decided that we're going to find out what is really causing this issue. Is it really turnover? Is it really people being overworked? Is that people not believing in the values that have been instilled over the years? And so obviously the long story is that everyone in the room was able to talk and express what their opinion is. And I really think that what we reached at this point is really, I was able to say I failed to hire the right people. I failed to make sure that the work is fairly distributed among all of the team members. I failed in all of this, but we're here together. I need your help because we can do it. And so the entire conversation was about how do we deliver 100% excellence to our client. This is our theme. This was our theme. And what we did is we engaged people in various groups, and they all came with ideas. They all came with the areas that they want to work in to improve the environment. And essentially, and I'll keep talking about what exactly came out of this, but the biggest lesson that we would like to share with you in terms of creating that culture of engagement is to really be able to create an environment where people feel safe to say, I failed, I'm going to learn from it, this is how I'm going to change this. To be vulnerable to express what went wrong and how you can learn from this. I also think it is very important to really encourage people to ask for help. And all of my colleagues had said that openly, that they have never worked for a company that has such an immense amount of friendship among people. And I have realized that although we have gone through a very difficult time, at the end of the day, we have fostered the sense of relationship between employees. And really that brings a lot of engagement within the workforce. I mean, there are statistics with Gallup, they're saying that people stay within a company because of the relationship that they have built with their supervisors and their peers. And the reason people leave companies is because of their bosses.
That's right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I heard that. And so that ability to encourage people to ask and offer that environment is really important. And then what we did here with this exercise, and I'm really offering this to you as a suggestion, so each one of the areas of excellence that my employees came up with, we all listed all of the elements of what would it take. So the areas are, I can't read very well, but essentially being accountable. How do you bring the best value to your client? How do I keep learning and the professional development, et cetera. So at the end of the day, that story of engaging people so they can come up with these ideas, that really puts you in a place where you show to your employees that they're listened to and that they're valued. Then if we can go to the next slide. Another very important area that we suggest to you as being incredibly important for creating that culture of engagement is the communication. So there are several cases where if you have turnover, what we recommend really is to get together with the employees and figure out what is the cause of this turnover. Figure out what really has been going wrong so that once you determine the cause, you know the steps that could be taken so this turnover can be addressed. And one of the real lessons learned is that once you get to a point where you stabilize and you believe that you have instilled those elements of the culture of engagement, the story is that this never ends. It's like define a problem, figure out how to solve it, keep track of your progress, reward people for things well done, but then start again. Because if you get stale, that culture of engagement is very easy to actually be ruined. So in terms of communication, what my employees had said, and this is here also a story of how do we develop those areas of excellence, how to create creative solutions. This is to bring the innovation out of people. Because if they give you idea for innovation, you engage them already. And this is one of the areas of engagement where people, without being solicited, they come to you and they come up with ideas of how they can change their performance for better. We talked about the sense of nothing hidden. It's like, it is what it is. People will know that there is nothing that you hide. Sometimes in lack of information or communication, people can make stories. But when you tell them honestly what has transpired, it's much easier for them to connect the dots. One last point that I wanted to make is that as part of this discussion, what we found out that's really important and valuable is the fact that as people came together at the table and they shared ideas, they built up ideas as they were listening to other people. And Paula, we talked about this, that ability to listen and teach people to kind of not only listen but also respect what the other person is saying. And it's critically important for culture of engagement that people feel valued. And in order for a person to feel valued is that you have to listen to what they have to say and to challenge not the people but the ideas. And so I really think that it's important because that really brings innovation and it's really important. Thank you.
So now we're going to talk about ability to do your best work. It's really giving your employees, that chance to really prove themselves. So it comes down to 5 things. The first, knowing what is expected of you. When the rules of the game are unclear, people feel uncertain and unable to win the game. Being clear on job expectations, how you work together, how you're going to work with other teams, what the goals are, setting SMART goals, specific, measurable, attainable results, time-driven goals. Having a clear sense of how one contributes to the success and overall goal of their organization. As we mentioned, it's important to give people a line of sight to the bigger picture. Really understanding what is that vision for your organization, where do you see your organization going in the future. Being encouraged to use your strengths and competencies. Being attentive to creating situations where people can use their quote-unquote superpowers. Being able to see the impact of one's efforts. It's demotivating to do what is not recognized or doesn't make a difference. Be sure the people within your organization have the opportunities to see the impact of their work and feel proud. And it's also being given the tools to be successful. The materials, the technology, the right space, information, training. The bottom line is, what do your people need to do a good job? What do they need to keep growing and developing themselves professionally? Because boredom's also, when someone's bored at work, that also leads to high turnover and non-employee engagement. It can come in many forms, but if you're asking people to contribute, you need to provide them with that environment and resources they need.
Okay, next we're going to be moving on to commitment to growth and development. When we are most excited and engaged, that's when we're growing and learning the most. It's part of the human experience. The first here is providing healthy and constructive feedback for learning. Feedback gives an employee an outside perspective about their work and how they work. When well done, it promotes growth and encourages the employee to stepping up to new challenges and opportunities. It also helps with an individual's confidence. Ultimately, it creates a culture where regular feedback is welcome. Next is providing learning opportunities on the job, mentorship, coaching, and/or formal training. Programs such as these enables the individual to develop the skills to successfully succeed and take on those new challenges. It also helps promote best practices throughout the organization. Caring for the growth and development of each individual. Each individual is at a different stage in their career and their growth process. Listening to the goals and needs of individuals and being able to provide the resources and tools that they need to succeed shows that you care about their growth and encourage the success of that individual.
I want to share with you a little bit about, go back for a second, please, Carrie, about something that we do in our company, and we call it GalaBU. It's an internal vehicle for education and personal development. We set it up like a university with registration, first come, first served basis. It's fall and spring semesters, and we offer a variety of classes during the day for our employees. And this is an opportunity for them to learn things that they don't do every day. It's a way to communicate with all our employees about all parts of our business. So it's only for employees, and it also prepares people for internal promotions as well, because then when they know a little bit about what other people do in the company, it works very well. Our classes are taught primarily by our own employees, which is a great way for them to show their peers what they know, and it's a very highly regarded thing in our company. They get a lot of accolades from the rest of the companies in that regard, and they just really show up. It's such a great program, and I highly recommend doing something internally like that if you have an opportunity. And then, it doesn't have to come from the principal of the company. I mean, you can do that in smaller teams too. So I just want to share that with you. Okay. Next, we're going to talk about integrity in hiring, recognition, and rewards. How are we doing on time? Good. Okay, cool. Hiring practices aligned with purpose and values. Okay, so yes, purpose and values surely need to be considered during hiring. Depending on the size of your company, just one hire that goes against the values could really erode the strength of the culture. We look for qualities in people that help fit into our existing culture. I mean, we're looking for people who are conscientious about their work and people who like to have fun. People who are engaged when they are having fun at doing what they like to do. I mean, I tell my people, if you're not having a decent amount of fun, you're probably in the wrong place. Even more important than someone's skill set is really their commitment to integrity and their willingness to do something new. One of our hiring practices is that we want most of the people who are going to interact with a new employee to actually interview them. And sometimes, that could be anywhere from ownership to accountants to managers, and sometimes we get people in the room and it just happens to be they're there with 4 or 5 people. Okay, so one interviewing with 4 or 5 people. You would think that would be really daunting, but the feedback we get after that is really good. They're like, that was really easy. We put them at ease just by showing them how we interact with each other, and it really gives them a glimpse into how we are as a culture. Not only do they see our board, but they see us just really being there. Okay, recognition, both formal and informal, that recognizes the values. Leaders pay attention to examples of people living the values and challenge behaviors that don't. That's really important. Recognition can be formal and public or informal and private. Even a thanks to an employee for doing a good job means a lot. It just means a lot. The other day I said to somebody who was running a meeting, I said, that was really great. You ran that meeting so well. And he was like, oh, well, thank you. A little bit surprised, but yet so appreciative. I think that people generally don't communicate enough positivity in the world, and we're going to touch on that a little bit more later. At Golub, to reinforce our values, we created a shared values recognition program. This is a way for people to recognize their peers for outstanding demonstration of our values. People nominate coworkers. A nomination by a coworker for a coworker, it's a great way to just say thank you. And we communicate this to our whole company, and we made it really easy to do through our intranet, and it shows a lot of appreciation and gratitude. So not only create the programs, but do something that really instills the values. You can't do enough to do that. Authentic performance evaluations with appropriate development or corrective action. Okay, so making sure performance evaluations actually reflect performance and not just giving people meets expectations, which really discourages the rest of the team if it's not real. At my company, we've actually turned performance review process into something more of a conversation about performance rather than an administrative chore. We do write it down, but we do it 2 times a year, and it's not an administrative chore. I think talented people deserve a whole lot more than just being slotted into this bureaucratic, 5 to 10 scale, once a year point system. It doesn't really provide valuable feedback. So there's more meaning to a review process that's set up to focus on a person's strengths and on their uniqueness, which in turn helps to facilitate crucial conversations that you might have to have when there are really a lot of challenges and weaknesses to address. So we try to focus on professional objectives, accomplishments, goals, and participation in continuing education and participation in shared values. Okay, reward systems that make sense and encourage growth within the values framework. This is about rewarding performance and behaviors that contribute to the organization. And also then taking a step back and considering not rewarding goals achieved when they're not in line with the organization's core values. Sometimes that happens. Does anybody here have an example of that happening? You know, if somebody was, insider information, maybe an accountant. Sorry, Mary, I'm looking at you. And they do something. Yeah, I mean, they have to be willing. Maybe there's a financial word, but you got to be willing to step back and go, okay, well, was that really in line with what we really feel in our company? Okay, so next we are going to, we're always going to do a quick recap, right? We need a quick recap.
So before I do the recap, can I ask you to share some of your thoughts? I mean, so far we kind of talked about some of the elements that we thought are important in terms of creating a culture of engagement. And we talked about the values. We talked about essentially team environment and how you collaborate and how you build this within the structure of the organization. We talked about open and transparent communication and the importance of walk the talk. And if you want your employees to work as hard as you do, you better show them how this is done as well. Yes?
So I have a question, especially for Paula, and actually Morella as well, because you've had to implement a lot with, 10 to 20 people, and Paula, I don't know how big Gallup is, I should.
We're about 100-ish.
Okay, who is implementing, I mean, we're all responsible for it, we absolutely are, but the time commitment that it takes to say, oh my gosh, I have such a great idea, let's do this every month, oh my God, and then it just falls. Who's helping? How do you create that engagement of like, do you have to have a whole department that's HR that, and what if you just don't have that, those kinds of resources? How do you create that momentum and keep it going?
It's a fair question. Paula?
Well, Trish was sharing some stuff at our table that I think is really pertinent to this because, I take the time. Because this is really important to me, and I find the people who want to be involved with this. So, and they raise their hand, and it's like, do you want to come to? We had a Gallup we wanted to talk about purpose, our company's purpose. So I want to really get some information. Like, okay, how could we all get on the same page with purpose? So we had a course. We said, you want to be involved in helping us? So people raised their hands. So I think people like to get out of their everyday thing a lot. It's not that hard to do. And as Trish was saying, you do this stuff. This is the fun stuff, really. It's not the everyday work. And if you're in an engaged culture, you're going to want to do that. If you're in a culture where people are going to shoot you down and they're not going to, be in that space with you, then you're not going to want to do that. So I don't know, that's how we do it. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, to sort of follow up on that, and something that's been troubling me a little bit the whole time, or nagging on me, is that if you're making an assumption that whoever is at the top is buying in, or is empowering people, or is agreeing to allow people to rise up and to do what they want to do. And that's not always the case. And I know you alluded a little bit ago to, well, if you can't have that in the whole company, maybe just within the team you're working on, but I would really appreciate your insights on that.
Okay.
That's a very fair point. Thank you.
Trish
You're
wants to say
absolutely right.
something.
We had an opportunity like this where I had a leader who was not supportive of these type of things, and it was more like, so she would create what was intended to be cultural engagement or fun activities, but it was pushed on me. And because she was a micromanager, in the way she operated. When she told everyone they had to come, it was more like, you better be there or you're like destroying your career. It was like that. So really good to go. So then that taught the office. She was moved on, and it taught the office that maybe it shouldn't come from that level. And so they instead created a ambassador fund committee or a group or someone who wanted to do that.
Who doesn't want to be an ambassador of fun?
I know, exactly. When you name it like that, it was like me, right?
Name means
Well,
you don't
right?
want to offend
So-
those people.
And then with that, there's a budget and there's support. Hey, we want you to do this. We want people to participate. And then it's taken on, and the leadership says yes. And without that leadership saying yes, it does die. But when that leadership says yes, it can move forward. So you're absolutely right that if it comes at you in the wrong way, it's not good. But when it is supported, it's a great thing for building community and relationships in the office.
Sharon.
Right. So, you're all talking about situations that may or may not exist. Maybe if it comes from the top, like people who really are driven that way, people who are looking to make their companies that way, that's great. We're open to that, that's maybe not as good as all the way from the top. But then some of us work in situations where the top or the second line is not invested. And so I think exploring ways that you can create your own circles of support, and we kind of talked in our table a little bit about this idea of a department or a group, or even a group of friends who, Kelly mentioned that she had met a group of people in an orientation session. And that little group of people is creating their own kind of subculture. So maybe that's something to explore. How do you create a subculture when the larger culture may not support what you want to do? Even if it's 3 or 4 people that you might work with that are like-minded, that can support each other in creativity or achieving something that you set your own goals.
Kind of like a little grassroots effort within the corporate community. It's a good point. I mean,
Right. The truth is that we don't work and live in ideal environment where everybody at the top or in the middle always have the best intentions or the best knowledge or the best information. So I do appreciate the fact, and it actually leads to the other point, which is creating your own way of influencing, right? In a powerful, positive way, because if there are things that you can change, definitely go ahead and change them. But if you can't, and many of us can't. So first of all, why are we still there? Maybe there is still some sort of alignment, or maybe there is like something that we have to talk honestly with ourselves. But if there is a reason to stay, at least to make some positive impact by creating a subculture that can help us get in that direction. And one thing, I'm sorry to interrupt, one thing that we really wanted to talk about today is kind of along that line that not all of us are CEOs or running companies, right? So the question is, how do you influence a culture? How do you create that subculture of engagement if you're just a leader within an organization in the middle level? That you have a bunch of peers, but you're not the CEO that defines the strategy of the company. And I really want us to come out from this exercise by saying, I can make a difference. I don't have to be a CEO. I can make a difference, even by figuring out how my values align with yours and do something together. Or just talk to people why I feel this way and create something in common that in return can take us farther into what we can achieve by ourselves. So, and going back to what Paula said, it's really that positive approach. I agree with you, you can't possibly change everything. But what's the alternative? Do nothing?
start with something. You'd be amazed at how you can influence. When you've got a good thing going, let's put it right in the middle. You got this great thing going, people are going to be like, whoa, what's going on here? It's going to catch on. They're going to want in. And it's going to come from all different places. Sometimes that's just how it grows.
Well, I think, Paul, to your point, you don't have to do everything all at once.
Right.
Start small,
Yeah.
dig deep, and get a success under your belt, and then move on.
Right.
That's it.
Keep track of the success and start again.
That was good. Good advice.
To all those points, like the subgroups and doing small things and creating initiative, if you're a successful person, companies see green. My friend, if you're successful, you're gonna get the ear of someone and you can help push that change along, even in small ways.
And that person is gonna pretend that it was his idea.
Well, that might happen. That might happen, but you know what?
Maybe, but if it impacts everyone in the positive, then, sometimes you get to take one, but, you start another company and.
Okay, I think we're going to get to the next. Are you done?
I think so. So this is truly what we talked about tonight. And think about this, the values, the collaboration, the team environment, how we communicate and the transparency of it. I think that the ability to do your best work is about making sure that you are sure that every single employee feels valued. And in my mind, this is also matching the talent to the task. Because some people are just not going to learn or do things the same way how others are. And so in order to retain and have this culture of engagement, it's very much better to put the people to work in an area that they love and enjoy. Then the professional development and this ongoing commitment to learning, because at the end of the day, our employees have to feel more marketable by what they're learning from us, and that would create that sense of engagement. And finally, how do you put the dollars together to help give incentive for these people to be energized and to feel engaged? And I actually just want to give you examples. So in my company, what we did is, and this is all a result of the brainstorming of my employees, they decided that if they find a referral and we hire this person, that if this person stays with the company for 3 months, we give them $450. If somebody comes with innovative idea, you get $150 gift card. And so I heard what Paul is talking in terms of the performance review. I personally don't have a good one yet. It's kind of 5 to 10 scale, so I'm actually looking for ways to get this better. But again, start from somewhere, as Kathy said, and move it forward. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Marla. So now we're going to talk about, we're going to work on another group exercise amongst our tables similar to what we did last time. And this is going to really focus on how can you further strengthen your culture of engagement. So we want, as your table, to share an area that you would like to strengthen within your organization, ask for input and ideas. So what's one of the areas within your organization that's most challenged? We'll focus on that. We're going to take about 10 minutes to work as a group, and then we're going to share what we've learned. So, begin. All right, everyone, we're going to wrap it up. What we're going to do is we're going to go around the room and we're going to share one of the challenges that you faced, and then we'll also maybe, a solution as well. Did you want to share anything from that first group? Or are we going to, from that? Okay. So we'll share a challenge, and then we're also going to share a solution. And if let's say, Olivia has a challenge, and then, somebody else has experienced that within their company, please chime in, because we all just want to learn from each other. So we're going to start at this table.
Okay, so one thing we were talking about was the disconnect sometimes that companies will have between what the company actually does and produces, whether it's building a building or selling a product, and then the production of the process in which it gets there. And are people engaged? Do they know what the buildings look like? Do they know who the property managers are or not? And there can be a real lack of engagement and emotion in the company if the accounting department never steps foot into a building, for example. And we thought, well, the more people can get into buildings and talking to the property managers that are on site, they're always going back and forth with, the better. And they'll create better relationships, and they'll care more about what they're doing. So the building's not just an LLC, but it's an actual place where people live and work.
Thank you, Laura. All right, so we're going to go on over to this table. Debbie, do you want to share with us?
Yeah, one of the things we talked about was how do you create engagement, and one of the thoughts was an employee of the month. Paula shared that, people at Gallup submit, someone's name and what they've done and why they appreciate their values and how each individually, how we do that in our individual organizations and our departments. Alan was saying that you have an employee of the month, that he will email you and say, not just who that employee of the month is, but things that other employees have said about other people's. And people like to see their names in lights, and people like to feel in high regard. And it puts things in perspective, and it reminds you that you're just not a cog in the wheel, you're part of a larger institution. So yes, you can be an accountant who works in a building, but if you see that you're valued by the building owner, and you're valued by the management, you feel personally bigger than yourself.
That's great.
Thanks, Karen.
Thanks, Debbie. All right, so we're gonna move on over here. Kelly.
Our spokesperson.
You're gonna be our spokesperson. Here we go.
I don't know why they're laughing. Okay, so Carrie kind of had an interesting issue, which I can relate to because I work with a lot of different people. But in her project management role, her boss changes like every year. We were talking about how you build trust to have an effective partnership in a short amount of time. But we do not have a solution. So I don't know if anybody has any ideas, but that's something that we were discussing.
Play Twister.
We could do trust falls.
Problem solver.
All right, so now we're gonna move on over to this group. Kathy, do you wanna share? One of my
lovely colleagues would love to share it.
Ashley? Take it away.
Segmentation.
Okay.
So we talked about how segmentation of work sometimes becomes a challenge within organizations and communicating between the different groups, I would say. And we didn't really come up with a solution outside of communicating better, but I think that's probably not a solution, a very good solution.
I have a solution. Thirsty Thursday.
I like it.
Kill everyone's liver.
I have another solution. Whitney's Lunch and Learns, for that, so one segment will actually tell about best in class and what they do in their sciences, because a lot of times people don't share because they don't think each other understand each other's lingo or language or acronyms or whatever. And just have more of a casual lunch and learn type thing, to help people understand what other segments.
Like a round table.
Yeah, around.
Okay, all right, stepping over here, who wants to share? All right, Heather's got it. Okay, thank you, Heather.
So we talked about, one of our challenges is spending time with the young talent to teach them new skill sets when we're already always in a time crunch and there's not enough time. And sometimes the senior people feel like it's just faster for them to do it themselves than to take the time to slow down and teach. And Janet suggested, identify, because not everybody's a good teacher, identify some of the senior people that are really the best teachers and encourage them to do the teaching. If they like it, they're faster at doing it, they can get it across quicker. Any other suggestions?
We actually do identify people within our company that we think would be really good at training someone. We do this all the time. We send them to wherever they have to go, and it is so appreciated, and they feel good about doing it. So yeah, find your best people or find the person for that job, and that's the person who has the superpower for the moment, and send them off. Just do it. It works.
Or shadow for a day. Sometimes it's good to shadow a different department for a day, just to see what their life is like. It sucks up a day, but it's one day. And you can learn a lot when you leave your little bubble. Yeah, it does. A good point. It makes you appreciate what other people do and how they support you. There you go. Yep.
Okay, our last table. Who would like to share?
We talked a lot about hiring and how to figure out if the people that you're considering hiring have those values, if they're aligned with your purpose and values. And one suggestion was just get a good definition of what your values are, so really solidify that, and then just literally Google questions. Let's say, for instance, one of your values is innovation. Google a question, interview questions that demonstrate innovation as value, and apparently there's a lot of information out there. We also talked about just really listening for that value, so when someone is answering the question, really listening to what they're saying and deciphering if they're communicating that they hold that value as well. But we would also welcome some suggestions too on any concrete strategies you've used in hiring.
One of the things you can ask, if we do structured interviews, but one of the things that we've done is figure out what the values or traits that we're looking for, and then you ask people questions to tell you what they have done, that when they tell you the answer, you know whether or not they exhibit that value. You have to do a lot of thinking and thinking about it in advance to come up with the right questions or the right experience you want them to share with you. But you need to make them share with you something they have done, not something they think they'd like to do. Because something they've done will tell you whether they exhibit those values or not.
This sounds like a great lunch and learn topic, Janet.
Right?
I would say make sure you have the people who are working with, who are going to be working with an employee also interview.
Yeah.
So a really great situational coach taught me about this STAR way to answer a question or behavioral interviews. And what that stands for, I will let her tell you. I'm trying to look it up real quick. It sounds smart, but I can't get it to come up. So Sharon, tell us what that is.
It's STAR, which is situation. What was the situation you face? Tasks and actions, they're TA, and R, results. Situation, tasks, and actions, and results. And some people call it SOAR or CAR, but it's the same thing. It's how to respond to a situational question or behavioral question. But for the person who's interviewing, to really have a very clear idea on what it is you're looking for. So it's not just about the specific skills you're looking for, that somebody has experience in this kind of property or negotiating this or has achieved this in their academics or credentials, but really, I think you're totally right on when you're very clear on what values you're looking for. And I think that is probably where the breakdown usually happens. Not so much in finding the right questions, although that could be an issue too, but not having clarity around what's the objective of this interview? What are you trying to find out? So I think that's really the first thing, is really clear what you're looking for.
Action. Anybody else?
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Real quick, in the Google Doc, I don't know if we sent it out to the entire group.
We will.
We will. So in the Google Doc, you can see the notes from the first group exercise as well as notes from this group exercise. I highly encourage you to look at that first one, to look at the strengths and just really cool things that other organizations are doing.
A lot of the answers are listed in the first part. The answers to our to our challenges. So that's why we put them together.
I'm going to turn it over to Paula.
Okay. Okay, so we are getting very close to being done, and I'm excited that we're running on time. I think that now we really, now that we've engaged in this, we want you to think about what you're going to do differently when you return to work. And just take a minute to write at least one thing down, because then when you leave here, you go, oh, I was going to do that thing. And I think it'd be a worthwhile exercise. Just take a minute, one thing or more that you're going to do when you go back to your office. Okay, can I get maybe one or two people to just tell us what you're going to do? Don't be bashful. Trish, I see you're like smiling. What are you gonna do?
Sure, so gain feedback from my team after we do events on what worked or didn't work or what they enjoyed and how it will help them to engage. So really ask them this question.
Paula, give her the mic or repeat it.
Oh, sorry. Here, say that again. Yeah, right. That's a first.
Right.
Sorry.
I was saying that I would like to, after the events, I happen to be the ambassador of fun, so after these events, I'd like to ask a question like this. What did work? Did it make you feel engaged? What will you do differently to the people who have participated?
Perfect. Okay, anybody else want to share something? Yes.
So my company is undergoing a brand merge that I'm in charge of. And instead of, so I was thinking, okay, so I have to do this, and I'm working with the marketing director, do this and this, and I'm like, wait a minute, this is a perfect opportunity to start a better corporate culture. So we're merging all of these offices together. And instead of me doing all of it, let's create a committee. Let's get everybody's input and let them do it.
Yeah, it is. That is. We could not end with anything better than that. But I'm just going to do one more thing here, and that is. Okay, so as we wind this up, we like to offer one more quick takeaway that's going to strengthen engagement and, frankly, improve our world. The 5-to-1 ratio and the value of emotional bank accounts. We all know that relationships require give and take, but how much can you take and how much do you have to give for a relationship to be good? Okay? Research scientists and psychologists have arrived at a simple 5-to-1 ratio. The 5-to-1 ratio means that for every one negative interaction or communication you have with someone, you need 5 positive interactions or communications to cancel or counteract the negative one. Imagine your relationships as emotional bank accounts. Every negative interaction you have with someone is like $1 withdrawal, and every positive interaction you have earns you a 20-cent deposit. Okay, so a deposit of 20 cents may not seem like a big deal, and it may even seem like a lot of work to deposit such a small amount. Maybe, you want to just wait, and wouldn't it be better until you have a really big deposit to make? Well, don't wait, because negative interactions can come up unexpectedly and unintentionally. You don't want to end up making a withdrawal when you don't have the funds, okay? When you overdraw from an emotional bank account, you end up creating a deficit that hurts your relationship by creating an emotional debt. In other words, it's always worth making the 20-cent deposit. By taking advantage, this is how you do it, by taking advantage of every opportunity to share authentically positive interactions, you're making a long-term investment in your relationships. Thank you. So that is our conclusion.